What is up, everybody? This is Brian with the Mustard and Mayo, and today I am working again for the third time on my 2015 BMW F80 M3. I don't think I really posted a really good intro video about this car, but this was the probably might still be one of the cheapest M3s for sale. Again, it's a 2015 six-speed manual, Yas Marina Blue, and when I bought it, it had about 142-ish thousand miles. And at this point, it has about 148,000 miles, which is not the highest miles for an M3 that we know of, but it's definitely one of the highest. It was daily driven by the previous owner a ton before I got it. And I've had it for about 6 months or so now, and this is now the third time that I'm going to be working on it. Now, just a quick recap on this car. When I first bought it, I knew that it needed a couple things. Nothing major, but definitely not cheap stuff. When I got it, it had 4 very old Pirelli Scorpion all-season tires, which were hard and the back were bald. So the first thing I did was to get some Continental Extreme contacts for all 4 corners. And then at the same time, there was a ton of noise coming from the brakes, and there was actually some vibrations and stuff from the rear. So we got new rotors, as you can see here. They're still looking really nice. And then new BMW pads. So from right out of the gate, I knew that I had to do just a little bit of maintenance on the car. So that would be repair number 1. Repair number 2 would be when I actually had my first breakdown of the car, which was I had a fuel injector, I believe it was this first one in here, was stuck open, was pouring fuel down into the engine. I did a whole video on that. All 6 got replaced, as well as new coils and new plugs. That was a fairly expensive repair. I want to say it was over $1,000 for just the parts. And that was with getting some good parts discounts through some contacts that I have. Now this will be the third time that I will be working on this car, and if we can get a good view into the engine bay, you can actually take a peek. This should not be this way. This is the drive belt that goes around the alternator and some of the other pulleys and maybe the air conditioning. I haven't looked far enough down in there. But the last 2 or 3 days I was driving this car, I started to notice there was a bit more engine noise than I was used to hearing, and specifically I was hearing like a dragging pulley or something like that. And my assumption is the alternator pulley bearing has seized, because the belt itself is not really in bad shape, except for the fact that it's torn. It's jumped the belt now. You can see it's all shredded and stuff like that. I had seen on the Carfax history that the alternator was replaced, says Carfax, but when it turns out I called the shop that did the work on it, they in fact only did a diagnostic on the car, which they said that the alternator need to be replaced due to engine noise. So funny thing is, I've not really noticed a whole lot of noise in the time frame that I've had the car, but I guess it has been a problem for the previous owner, and it is has become a problem for me as well. So at this point, all that's got to come off. So today I'm going to be working on, unfortunately, I've done all this before. The brace has to come off. The plastics have to come off. The charge pipe from here to here has to come off, which sucks because I literally just put those filters in recently. So either way, I'm going to take all this off. It'll make it pretty easy to work on. And then I've got parts to pick up at BMW to include a new alternator, because you cannot replace the pulley alone on this model, unfortunately. You seem to be able to with other ones, but not these. And then while I'm in here, I do have new drive belts, which I have both of. And then I'm going to go ahead and replace all the pulleys as well while I'm in here. So I guess let's go ahead and get this thing running again. All right, so as you can see, we've got the charge pipe off, we've got the brace off, and I have good news to report. It looks like the alternator itself may actually be okay. When I spin the pulley on this one, it's quiet. There's no bearing noise. There's nothing crazy like that. And if you do a little bit closer inspection, I don't know if y'all can see this or not, but that pulley right here where I have the light on it is completely shot. If anything, I can see bearing pieces down in the bottom here. And if I can reach my hand down here, you can actually see this pulley is completely, yeah, you can actually hear more bearing pieces falling down in. So this thing is completely toast. And if I'm looking at it, I can tell these other, that's an idler pulling right there from what it looks like. And that looks like the tensioner pulley. And you can see from both of these, if I can get this to focus, there you go. There's a lot of just belt residue and stuff like that. You can see it's been probably dragging for a while. So I'm going to have to get, the good news is I don't have to replace the alternator, it looks like. So that will actually make this job about half as expensive as I thought it was going to be. However, what I will need to do is I will need to get the water pump belt off, which there's a pretty interesting procedure for how that comes off I've seen, on how it creates tension, which is kind of a cool thing to see. And then as far as getting this off, there is a bolt way down in there. Let's see if I can get that to focus. Yep, there's a 10mm bolt that holds these oil lines down. I need to remove that so I can move these around. And then I'll have to figure out exactly what bolt or screw or whatever is holding that pulley on. I'll have to get that one off. And then while I am here, I am going to go ahead and replace the tensioner, which is the one underneath of here. And then I believe there might be one other idler in there, if I'm not mistaken, although I don't really see it. So anywho, I'm going to go ahead and replace those two pieces. Obviously, I'm going to take this belt off. And since that belt's got to come off as well, I'm going to go ahead and replace it also. And that should save me from having to replace the alternator, since apparently that is not the issue. It's just been the issue right over here. So that's going to save me quite a bit of money, although it's going to make this job somewhat interesting because it's a very tight area to work in. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to drop stuff down in here, so that's going to make things fun. All right, so it is confirmed that idler pulley is trash. So the bolt, in fact, was in good shape, as you can see here, which is a T50, if I'm not mistaken. But you can see the bearing is completely separated from the inside of this pulley here. Obviously, there should be bearings. There should be, I forget what they're called, washers, but it should be a whole sealed system. And as you can see, it has completely come to pieces. And this is trash. Now, to get to that, I did have to disconnect these oil lines here that come right down off the oil filter. So I knew that there was going to be some oil coming out of it. And the good news is there was a smaller bolt that just had to come out right here. And then these lines basically just pressed in so they can just pop right out. And of course, there was tons of oil coming out of this. So I've had to put 2 or 3 rags in there. It looks like it's stopped dripping now. But be aware of that. You can see I've made a little bit of a mess. I'll have to clean up, but all that's getting replaced anyway. But that gave us the opportunity to move these lines out of the way, because where that pulley was, you can see the hole. It was just literally right there in the way of where I need to put the tool. So that is the part that's failed. There is another tensioner down there that I did find. Excuse me. So that'll come out. And then, of course, this tensioner will come out as well. So we'll get all 3 of those replaced. You can see the belt is off on both sides. Now, I will go ahead and point out this was a really cool system. So there's a really good video on another channel, but basically you undo those 4 10mm bolts that are on the front of the pulley itself. And then you take a 22mm bolt, 22mm socket with a long wrench or whatever you've got available. You put that on the crank pulley. You turn it counterclockwise until you get to the point where you can see this thing spins around now. But there is some play in this. You can see there's a little bit of a gap right here where the flashlight is. So this pulley actually shifts around, and depending on the orientation of this pulley is how it determines if it's got tension on. So it's pretty cool. It's probably only, what, 3/4 of an inch or so of movement on that pulley, but that's all that it really needs for the tension. So once you undo those 4 bolts, and usually it's a good idea to spray a little bit of lubricant on that, because mine's been sitting like this for a while. Spin that crank bolt, and then you'll hear it pop, and it'll basically slide down where you can see it's in the position now, so you can actually get that belt off and fish the old one out, or in my case here in a little bit, fish the new one on. So I just need to continue to pull the rest of this apart. I'll do some cleanup while I'm in here, put the belts on, and we should be good to go. All right, so all 3 of the pulleys are now out. You can actually see that bottom one there. And I've got all the new parts direct from BMW. You can see I've got the new parts here next to the old parts. So this was the idler pulley that had failed. And as you can see, this is what it should look like versus this piece where the bearing is just literally completely gone. This is one of the tensioner pulleys, although it's more of just a, I guess it's probably more of like an idler pulley as well. It doesn't really look like it has much range of movement to it. Although this is the actual tensioner pulley. And I will say, this is probably the nice thing about getting these from BMW. There's a chance I could have got these parts OE from some of the other vendors and websites out there, but the fact that this already has the pin in it, which is keeping the tension open on this. Basically, when I get all this bolted back down, I can slip the belt on and make it a one-handed operation versus having to put the pin in there or have to hold the spring tension like this one would need. But while I've got all these out, I did want to go ahead and show the tools that were needed. So let's see here. For the lower, I guess this one's the, yeah, this was the lower pulley. This was an E16, I think, E14. And BMW's Infinite Wisdom, they have different sizes on this one. So the larger one, the actual tensioner one, this one's an E12. So you will need to have some of these bits for that. And then the one that was broken, which is the idler pulley, I think that one was, should have had it off already. I think it was a, where is this thing? T45, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, yeah, it was the T45. So you need to have your Torx bits, which I've got several sets of at this point now. And then you need to have the whatever you call the E-bits, the Torx sockets. So that's what's needed to get it out. And then as you can see here, this is the new belt for the water pump and the power steering, or water pump and the crank. And then this is the large Serpentine belt, the one that shredded into a million pieces. That will go on once we have all the tensioners on. So overall, not too hard of a job in all reality, especially once you get these oil lines unbolted and moved out of the way. They are kind of messy because, as you can see, this one, which I'm guessing is the feed line, is full of oil, and just in the process of moving it around, there's rubber hosing down at the bottom, so you kind of end up squeezing and oil comes out. So much like when I took the line off from the underside here, you do have to try to have some way to catch the oil to make sure you're not making a total mess. But everything came apart pretty easily, and with this thing, I was able to get pretty good access to everything and was actually able to pull all of the pulleys and the tensioners directly out of this hole. I've seen some other videos where they can bring it over on the side, but honestly, with these disconnected, it made it pretty easy to get these out. So really, at this point, it should just be getting all of this put back together, and then ideally cranking it up, and we should be in good shape. All right, as you can see, everything is back together now. Belts are on, all the tensioners are on, of course. All the plastics, the bracing, everything is back as it was. Just cranked it up, and as you can hear, it's nice and quiet in here. There's no pulley whine. Alternator seems to be working great. No check engine lights. Belts are moving along perfectly, and yeah, everything went together pretty smooth. All right, and just like that, everything is back together. Test run, everything is holding together well. And even though this is the third time I've worked on this car, I did understand that, you know, obviously with some higher miles, there was definitely going to be some maintenance things to take care of. And honestly, I would consider doing drive belts and idler pulleys and stuff like that maintenance issues, less reliability issues. I mean, if they were the original ones, they went 148, 664 miles, 148,000 miles. So I'm pretty happy with that, and I'm very happy to have the car back together. All in all, minus buying some tools, the job was, I think, about 400 to 500 bucks for all the belts and the pulleys direct from BMW. And overall, I am pretty happy with that. So let's go ahead and give her one good rip. Yes. Yeah, I'm happy with it. It's definitely back together. As always, thanks for watching, and see me on the next time.